Welcome to our episode of Qualitative Research in Depth. Today we are going to look at qualitative research. This is going to be somehow a long video, so stay with me. We are going to look at so many things in qualitative research, the definitions, how to design qualitative research, how to analyze the types of qualitative research. So let's dive into qualitative research. So what is the goal of this presentation? So it is going to be to enhance the capacity to conceptualize, design, and conduct qualitative research. So the overview of this presentation is we're going to look at what is qualitative research, types of qualitative research, developing a qualitative research question, then qualitative methods and analysis plan. Let's start with this old man. He said, not everything that can be counted counts, and not everything that counts can be counted. This old man is Albert Einstein. So what did he mean by this? It means that there is always more to the story than numbers displayed in quantitative research. So there is, if you see something, maybe a figure that maybe the number of people who are sick are maybe 40%, there is more to the story than what you see in numbers. So that's what we are going to look at. So let's start with these two questions. The first question is, what proportion of patients stop taking their diabetes medicine for 3 consecutive days, 3 months after diagnosis? And the second question is, how does medication shape the lives of people with diabetes? So in the first question, we see that we are interested in numbers. What proportion of patients, like what percentage of patients stop taking their diabetes medicine? And in the second question, we are interested in the feelings and experiences of these patients. How does medication shape the lives of people with diabetes? We want to look at their experiences when they take medicine, when they have diabetes. So these are the two questions that clearly define a quantitative research question and a qualitative research question. Let's go ahead. What is the qualitative research? So qualitative research is a strategy for systematic collection, organization, and interpretation of textual information. We are going to look at text mostly in qualitative research. So it uses inductive approaches to generate novel insights into a phenomenon that are difficult to measure quantitatively. For example, we can't measure people's feelings. So for that matter, we use qualitative methods. So this gives an understanding of how people feel and why they feel that way. So it has to do with emotions, feelings, perceptions, and experiences. Let's go ahead. Let's look at a research question. I mean the advantages and disadvantages of qualitative research. So the advantages, it is detailed. You get a lot of stories from people, so you get a lot of data. So it captures narratives and perspectives of participants, contextualizes knowledge. It's not based on pre-existing ideas of the researcher. So you can't go in with already your formulated ideas. It is the people you talk to that give you the idea, and it's always compelling. The disadvantages, though, you can't generalize it because you have interviewed a particular group of people and asked how they feel. It doesn't mean it is the same way that another particular group feels that way. It is always subjective, and usually we study a small number of people. So what are types of qualitative research? We have ethnography. This is a long-term investigation of a group that is based on optimal participation in that group. So in ethnographic research, you go and you identify a group of people. For example, if you want to study Black Americans, and you want to study how they react, why they react that way, how they feel, how they perceive everything, you go into that community and live with them, experience with them whatever they experience. So while you're observing them and documenting. So by that you will know and you will understand why they feel that way and why they act that way. That is ethnographic research. So we have ethnomethodology. This is the empirical study of methods that individuals use to give sense to and to accomplish their daily actions. These are just a study of methods. Then we have grounded theory, which is very common in qualitative research. So researchers are responsible for developing other theories that emerge from observing a group. So the theories are grounded in that group that is observable. But researchers add their own insights to why those experiences exist. This is the commonest type of qualitative research. Ethnography gives rich data, but takes a long period of time and takes a lot of money. And most often, or sometimes, people, when they go into communities, they blend in with them. Sometimes they don't come back, they forget about the research. Yeah, that's true. So we have phenomenology. This seeks to explain the structure and essence of the experiences of a group of people. It is mostly used by psychologists. A phenomenologist is concerned with understanding a certain group of behaviors, that group's point of view, from that group's point of view. You want to understand their behavior from their point of view. So then we have kinesics. This is normally used when you study the body movements of and the mannerisms of the patient or of the participants. So if you are interviewing someone, you try to see how they move their body when they are expressing. Some people cry, others try to use their hands, hand gestures, and other facial expressions. So all these methods can characterize participants' perspectives and experiences in a great depth. So that brings us to the differences between qualitative and quantitative research. So in between we have the mixed methods, but qualitative in general, the approach is inductive. The goal here is a depth of understanding and generate a hypothesis. The setting is always natural, we don't alter the setting. The sampling is most times purposeful. Data collection, we use interviews, observation tools, and the analysis is iterative interpretation. While for quantitative, it is mostly deductive in approach. The goal is a breadth of understanding. That's why we use tests like hypothesis testing. The setting is most times experimental, like in clinical trials, all course. We have a sampling is mostly random in order to get a clear representation of a population. The data collection methods and tools we use normally surveys, clinical data, and the analysis is almost always statistical tests and modeling like regression methods. So what are the qualitative techniques? We have interview. In interviews, we have what we call focus group discussion. As you know, it is a group of people, of participants that you come up with, or you passively select, and you talk about matters or specific research question or something you want to discuss. So what matters in a focus group discussion is the group composition. Is it only for elderly, or for children, or for middle-aged, or for this type of gender? So all is it a mixed gender? You want to hear a discussion between all these people. So there is a modulator. The seating arrangement is always a key. Normally we sit in circular form, or they sit when they are facing you. The venue is normally selected by the participants where they feel safe. We record the discussion and we motivate participants. Then we have in-depth interviews. This is a one-on-one interview. So you want to know what people think, feel, and experience. So we have types of in-depth interviews, which one is ethnography. So in ethnographic interviews, the respondents are encouraged to provide a detailed explanation of their experiences, feelings, or beliefs. So we have cognitive testing, executive interviewing. So executive interviewing is a specialized form of in-depth interview. It focuses on busy people, hard to reach. You have Minister of Health, or a Minister of Gender, or Minister of Government officials. So it's executive. Participant observation is also another type. This aims to gain a close and intimate familiarity with a group of individuals, such as a religious, occupational, or subcultural group, or a particular community. So you go in and you observe the people. You don't tell them that I'm observing you, because they will change their behavior or they will change their reactions. So there are practices through an intensive involvement with people in their natural environment, often but not always over an extended period of time. We have observers phenomenon. It's in natural context. There are 5 dimensions of participant observer. So we have the role of the observer. What are you going to do in that society? The portray of the role of others, portray of the study purpose, duration of observation, and focus of observations. So we record data while we are observing a group of people, interviewing people. So what we do is what we call mental notes or jotted notes. We write them down, and we have the expanded field notes. What are the qualities of a participant observer? Self-criticism. This is, I think, a quality of every human being. Self-criticism. You should be able to criticize yourself. A good listener and objectivity. So you don't go in while you have already your conclusions and you are just feeding in, connecting dots. No, you have to listen and be objective. So we have narrative inquiry. This is a process of gathering information for purpose of research through storytelling. So this is normally used by journalists, although they might not be knowing that they are doing a narrative inquiry. So they go and in a form of an investigation. So the researcher then writes a narrative experience. So what does sampling mean in qualitative research? You know, even in qualitative research, you have to sample. So it differs from, this differs from someone of the understandings held by the researcher and scholars. So the definition differs. So, but sampling in qualitative research generally is in a broadest sense of that can be defined as the selection of specific data sources from which data are collected to address the research objectives and all questions. So what are some of the sampling techniques? You see, from a population, from a big population, we go and we pick a sample. That is sampling. So we have different sampling methods in qualitative research, like we do in quantitative. Phenomenology. Phenomenology sampling is choosing from informants. We have a case study. If you have cases, you select data from the cases. Thus, what is sampled occurs at 2 levels: the case and unspecified data sources within the case. So we have purposive sampling. This is the commonest, and that's what you will almost see in all manuscripts. So purposive sampling, the logic and the power of purposeful sampling lie in selecting information-rich cases for in-depth study. So you select a group of people that have the best knowledge of a particular subject. For example, if you are going to look at why people don't take medicine, or why diabetic patients don't take medicine, you are going to sample from the diabetic patients who are given medicine, and you are going to sample from the doctors. Those are the people who know about the subject. You're not going to go to the street and ask someone who is, maybe do a construction and ask them about this, because they don't know about that particular subject. So purposeful sampling strategies, we have maximum variation sampling. This is the commonest, and it's what I will talk about, maybe even snowball. So maximum variation, you want to look to sample from different characteristics of the population. You sample from the young ones, adults, middle-aged, those with children, those without children. So if you are going to look at a specific research question that encompasses a great deal of participants who are not of the same characteristics, you try to sample from each and every characteristic of a group. Then we have snowball sampling. This is this is normally for hard to reach populations, all populations at risk of exposure or confidentiality. That's when you get the first participant, and that first participant directs you to the next participant, and that next participant directs you to the rest of the participants. So if you're going to interview drug users or drug users, IV drug users, they are not going to just come. You first get one, then that person takes you to the next and to the next, something like that. I think even journalists use snowball sampling. So what are the products of qualitative research? What do we intend to gain from after qualitative research? So we have recurrent themes or hypotheses. So themes are unifying concepts or statement. So they identify and characterize the patterns of behavior, the group interactions, individual perception. This can help to create a testable hypothesis, which you can collect and test quantitatively. So you can also use it as a beginner method or a pilot for a survey instrument to know which elements or factors should I include in my survey instrument. So what is qualitative data analysis? Now we are at data analysis. We have seen the types on how to collect quantitative data sampling. Now we are looking at qualitative data analysis. QDA, qualitative data analysis, is a range of processes and procedures of moving from qualitative data that has been collected into some form of explanation, understanding, or interpretation of people and situations that we are investigating. So you're from the process of collecting your qualitative data, then you try to make sense out of all that text and the conversations, the interviews, and you want to get an understanding, an explanation, or interpretation. So what are the steps in qualitative data analysis? All qualitative data analysis involves 4 essential steps. We have data management, that is data cleaning. We have data reduction, data interpretation, and data representation. So let's look at one by one. The approaches, there are two main approaches of qualitative data analysis. We have the deductive. In deductive, you already have you already have your research question and you have your themes, and now you are going to map your themes to what you see in the text or in the verbatim, and yeah. And we have the inductive. This is the commonest approach. We use the emergent framework of to a group of data and look for relationships. That's a grounded theory. So you have your data, you collected data, your transcripts, you read the transcripts and you try to make sense out of the transcript without prior knowledge. So data analysis, we have this spiral one where we generate raw data, organize data, read through the notes and read the transcript, identify themes, then aggregate them, then interpret data. The same procedures, you collect data, then you go to data management. That's when you organize your data. You read and memoing. So in reading and memoing, you're reading your transcript and writing small text of things that come across your mind while reading this transcript. You describe, classify, and interpret what you have written or what you have analyzed. Then representation, and yeah. We have step one, raw data management. We have already looked at data management. So this is the process of preparing and organizing raw data into meaningful units of analysis, like text or audio transformed into transcript. You have recorded your conversation, then you put it into transcript. It is transcribed. So we have image data transformed into videos or photos or charts. As you review your data, you will find that some of it is not usable or relevant to your study. So you will get a lot of information from people, but not all of it is useful for that topic. So step 2, data reduction. That's when you try to get chunks out of this data. You want to get useful content. So get sense out of the data holistically. Read several times, that is immersion. So we encourage that before you analyze any transcript, you read it 3 times, at least 3 times. While you're reading, you classify and categorize, and you write notes, what we call memoing. You write notes on the margins. So you write the things that come up to your mind while you're reading this transcript. Preliminary classification schemes emerge. Yes, categorize raw data into groups, that is chunking. Annotating data, that's the purpose of memoing. So memos serve as written records to document the process of reading and analyzing your data. So they draw linkages and patterns in your data across an interview, across participants. So they also highlight key and novel findings. You collect ideas and insights into your data. So you get familiar with your data. So you note quality of the data available and to analyze. So what to capture? What do we usually write in memos? So individual quotes. It might be something interesting in a specific quote that reminds you of something you read in another interview. So the memos of individual interviews, you write them separately on the interview. So write a summary of memos of the interview to capture details of the informant and what they contribute to your understanding of the topic. Still, what to capture in memos? The themes and the patterns that emerge. So as you start to see the patterns of data, keep a track that through the memos to yourself. So memos do not have to be written in perfect grammar. So you can see a certain word in a sentence and you write it down, or you try to describe what you have read. So they don't have to be formatted or structured in a certain way. It is what you understand from what you read in your transcript. They don't have to be understanding to anyone but you and your team. So what do you do with memos? If the memos is written before data collection ends, memos can be helpful to guide interview questions. So as you collect these memos, you read and hold you when you're writing notes, they can shape the interview questions. You can develop codes based on themes and content identified in the memos. You can share these memos with your research team and talk about the findings. Memos still help keep a track of ideas that emerge through each topic. So we have data reduction. That's when you develop an initial sense of usable data and generate categories. So you develop a primary set of codes that we shall look at data analysis in using software as we finish this topic. So we shall see how we do data reduction, how we do coding. So coding, you give a code to a certain sentence or a paragraph or a phrase to what it is meaning according to the context of the research question. So we have data reduction, the second data reduction, that is reducing data from chunks into clusters and codes. So you group them into clusters. So this is called like refining the first cycle of coding. So the coding process, initial coding, includes as many as 30 categories. So in the initial cycle, you are just getting everything out that you read through this transcript. Then in the second cycle of coding, then that's how you reduce and group those codes into small chunks or small meanings. You may find that most of these codes are similar, so you combine those codes that you reduce. That is done in the second cycle of coding. So what is a priori or in vivo codes? A priori codes are defined from literature or theoretical frames. So you have the theoretical framework. For example, in implementation science, we use the consolidated framework for implementation science. It's called CIFA. So you get several domains and try to map your codes on what you see. In vivo is inductive or grounded. Most times we use this. Coding level, we have descriptive to interpretative to pattern coding, all open to axial to selective coding, all first cycle to second cycle coding. Personally, I use first cycle to second cycle coding. Step 3, data interpretation and themes. So then you group these chunks, then you try to group them into those with similar meanings that you have coded. So for example, if you're doing how patients feel when they take their medicine, maybe some of them tell you that the medicine gives me nausea, headache. So when you have all those codes like nausea, headache, diarrhea, or you can group them into side effects of medicine. So you try to get the meaning of these chunks of data. So once coded, these chunks become clusters in similar theme categories. So you have now a category of maybe the negative effects of diabetic drugs, where you have the side effects In the side effects, you have the nausea, vomiting as individual codes. So then you create a meaning out of these clusters. Then you label them as themes, all sub-themes. So step 4 is data representation. That is interpretation of all analysis of qualitative data. It occurs simultaneously. So now as you group all, you cluster all, you get out of these categories or themes from the codes, you try to see how am I going to represent this data, how am I going to interpret this data, things like that. They occur concurrent as you analyze the data. So the themes become the story to all the narrative. So you can start with maybe basing on the other example, that when patients swallow the medicine, what they first get is the negative effects, then after they can tell you, then we got relieved, then they can tell you. So that's the story that you were trying to tell someone from your data, from the analysis you have done. You try to make a coordinated story from interpretation of your results. So we have data representation types. We have telling a story with data. Most times I use stories. Then we have storytelling, narrative, chronological, flashbacks, critical, incidents, thematic, figures, tables, and charts. Still in qualitative data analysis types, we have the common types of analytic approaches, the domain or content analysis. We have thematic analysis, grounded theory, ethnographic or cultural, and others. So the most common is content analysis, thematic analysis, and grounded theory. So you always hear those ones.